Excellent!
What's up guys, welcome to my monthly builds video for April 2019. This is a monthly series and it's about the very first thing that you need to do if you're building a new computer, and that's decide what parts you're going to use. So today I'm going over parts lists. If you're interested in me actually putting systems together as in build videos, check out my builds playlist, which I will link down in the video's description, and then you can actually see me put computers together. In the meantime, I today will be going over 3 different parts lists, and these are going to be a little bit higher end today, ranging from pretty high end around $1,200 up to $3,000, and then an absolutely crazy one that I did that's well over $6,000. This is all based on your feedback from last month's straw poll, so thanks for voting, those of you who did, and if you look in the description for this month's video, there's another straw poll for next month in May. What do you want to see? I've re-upped quite a few of the options from last month that were popular. I also added an HTPC option in there too. So let's dive into it for our first build, and this one is about $1,150 altogether. I'm using PC Part Picker for my part picking lists, by the way, and links to all this stuff is down in the description. This one's actually coming in at about $1,126.71. That is after a couple mail-in rebates, so you'll actually end up paying a little closer to $1,160 or $1,170. But we have a Ryzen 7 2700. These have recently come down in price. They were $220, but it's bounced back up to about $240. Still a really good deal for an 8-core, 16-thread processor, and you get a Wraith Spire cooler along with it, which will cool it adequately to get you up and running. Of course, you can upgrade that in the future if you want. This is a micro ATX build, so I went with a micro ATX motherboard. Did I mention that at the beginning? This is the price, power, size optimized gaming PC. I wanted a reasonable price, I wanted a lot of power, and I wanted it to be not crazy tiny like a mini ITX build, but I want it to be smaller. So the B450M Steel Legend is the motherboard from ASRock, which you can get for about $90. I like ASRock's budget boards as long as you don't go super budget. If you step up from there, from like the $60, $70 boards to like the $80, $90 ones, you actually get a lot for your money. I like this one because it actually has dual M.2 slots. It's got one up there and then another one down in the bottom right. It's got 4 DIMM slots, so you can upgrade your memory in the future, and then it's a B450 motherboard, so that means it's unlocked for overclocking. So yes, you can overclock your processor with this motherboard. It's not going to overclock quite as well as your crazy high-end, $200-ish motherboards, but it will allow you to push your CPU a little bit further than it runs out of the box. For memory, I have a G.Skill Ripjaws 5 kits, 3200 speed. You do want to go with faster speed memory. For Ryzen, 3200 is a good one to aim for. $95 for a 16 gig kit. It's so awesome that memory is reasonably priced these days. This one is verified to work with Ryzen. Most of the reviews say it plugs in just fine with XMP values, or you might have to run it at 3000 speed, but not too much of a drop off there. For a storage drive, we have an Intel 660p 1TB M.2 NVMe drive. I went with this over like a 2.5-inch SATA SSD because the price per gigabyte for this drive is right in line with the price per gigabyte for standard SATA drives. This uses QLC flash memory, so for extended writes, it's not going to be quite as good, but it is NVMe because it's going to give you a little bit more performance than a SATA drive, and for the same price, yes, I would go for this over a 2.5-inch drive. For a graphics card, we have an RTX 2070 from MSI. I was just looking at well-priced RTX 2070s, which you can get for below $500. That's nice. This has an aftermarket cooler with a dual fan cooling solution, and it has a pretty clean looking backplate as well. So $485 after rebate for the RTX 2070 Ventus from MSI. Oh, and did I mention this also qualifies for the NVIDIA gift, so you can get Anthem, Battlefield 5, or Metro Exodus along with the purchase. That's a nice little add-on. For a case, I have the Cooler Master Masterbox Q300L Micro ATX Mini Tower case. And I like this case because it's small. I feel like it's well designed. It has total ventilation up here for good airflow, so that's nice. Micro ATX, and I feel like micro ATX cases don't get a whole lot of love. And it's pretty flexible too. There's actually a bunch of add-ons and upgrades you can do on this case. You can swap the I/O so it can be on the top, the bottom, left, or right. So very flexible, pretty unique design, stays in a pretty compact footprint too, and it's only $40, so hey, good deal. For our power supply, stuck with Cooler Master, and I'm really happy that we now have access to the MWE Gold 650. Cooler Master, they've made a lot of solid power supplies in the past, but I felt like their pricing hadn't been quite as competitive as like Corsair or EVGA recently. But here we have an 80 plus gold rated power supply, all black cabling. It's got a pretty nice low-key black and white color scheme as far as the design itself goes, and it's a good Cooler Master power supply. You can get it for $55. That is after mail-in rebate, so bear that in mind. But well done, Cooler Master. Thanks for providing some more competition to EVGA and Corsair in this range. Also added one more fan, Master Fan Pro 140 Airflow. This is actually like a $10 or $15 fan, but there's a mail-in rebate on it too, so $4 after that, because the case only ships with one fan, so you would want to add a second one. But there you go, guys. Just under $11.50 for this build. I think this would do really well for mixed use gaming, of course, but also anything that you need to do a lot of heavy lifting with the CPU, since you got 8 cores and 16 threads. Check it out, links in the description. Now guys, my next build is absolutely ridiculous, both in the price as well as the choice of components, so I feel like I need to have a disclaimer. This is not a sensible build, and probably nobody should realistically put it together, but it's based on the fact that I have these, not just one, but two of the MSI RTX 2080 Ti Lightning Z graphics card. Actually, one of them is Kyle's and one of them is mine. But clearly I need to put both of these in a system and, do some sort of pun along the lines of lightning striking twice, because that makes total sense. So I ended up with this build. It is $6,200 or so total, and that's not including the peripherals and everything. So I'm gonna go down this. It features a 9900K and dual 2080 Ti's and a bunch of other absurd stuff. And in case you're wondering, I've got the cards, so yes, this is probably gonna be the system I put together. When it comes to the case is probably a placeholder, and I might have more on that in the future, but still waiting on confirmation, so I don't want to say too much. But let's go over the parts from top to bottom, starting with the CPU, which is of course gonna be the 9900K. I could have gone high-end desktop with this, but the 9900K really has the best single core performance, and it's $515, so it's not like it's a cheap product by any stretch either. For cooling, we have the Enermax Liquitech 2 360mm all-in-one liquid CPU cooler. Very solid CPU cooler, and it's been proven multiple times over that the 9900K, especially if you want to overclock it, you probably can't get by with just a 240mm rad AIO. You're going to want a 360 one, and this one by Enermax is really solid. Just make sure you get the 2 version of the Liquitech. For a motherboard, and this is also a product that I already have on hand, so that's why I'm choosing it. It's a $600 motherboard. This is the MSI Z390 Godlike, which is their highest end Z390 motherboard, which is pretty absurd in many different ways and has lots of crazy stuff added onto it that I'm probably not going to even make use of all of it. But, if you want to go crazy high end, this is the way to go. Godlike is what MSI calls all of their super top end products. Except graphics cards, those are called Lightning. For memory, I have a 32 gig kit, the Team Nighthawk RGB memory, which is RGB and has a really cool looking design, and I thought would match very well with the motherboard. Also a kit that I already have on hand in 3200 speed. Since I got 2 of them, it's going to be a 4x8 gig configuration, so that will fill up all the DIMM slots and look really nice with the RGB LEDs on them. We of course need some high-end storage. I was looking at the Samsung 970 Pro, which is about $300 for the 1TB version. The WD Black is like right up there when it comes to performance, and it costs about $50 cheaper, so I went with that. I also haven't used the WD Black 1TB at this point, so we'll throw that in there too. I wanted some extra storage, so we have 4 more terabytes of SSD storage in these ADATA SU800 2TB drives. So these are perfectly fast and adequate as SATA SSDs go. They also have a black housing, so if I did want to remove that sticker if they were in someplace visible, I could probably do that. $220 on Amazon for these, and yes, you can still get the Intel 660p M.2 NVMe SSD for pretty much the same price as this, but you gotta bear in mind with the 9900K, you're more limited on PCI Express lanes. You're gonna want all 16, 8 and 8 going to the graphics cards, which means I can't really add a whole bunch of extra M.2 devices. That's why I went with a single fast NVMe SSD, 1TB for the operating system and programs, and then 4 more terabytes of SATA SSD storage for everything else. Next we have 2 of the GeForce RTX 2080 Ti Lightning Z graphics cards from MSI, which aren't available for sale anywhere. I think it's weird that MSI is having us talk about these cards, since it doesn't seem like anyone can actually buy them. Not that they're sensibly priced. They're about $1,600 each at retail, or so we are told. But, it's the highest of the high end, the top of the top end, custom PCB, crazy lighting effects. It's got an OLED on the side that shows the performance and current frequency and temperature and everything. So, it's going to be a beastly graphics card. Actually, make that 2 beastly graphics cards, but getting ahead of myself. So let's talk about a case, and for that I have the InWin 915 Black, which is a $450 case, which is expensive. That's a lot of money for a case, but for an over-the-top $6,000 plus system, you want something that stands out, that makes it a bit more unique and distinct, and this one is actually pretty cool. There's a video on Amazon that you can watch about it. InWin, they do unique designs that I appreciate. It's anodized aluminum. It's got tons of room inside as well as tons of airflow. It's got some LED accents across the front, USB Type-C as well, of course, which is nice. And of course, tempered glass side panel windows. So I think this is a beastly case. I have no plans to actually use this one directly. I might hit up InWin and see. Oh, it's also got automatic ventilation at the top. That's pretty cool. That kind of shows you where the extra $250 for this case goes compared to like a really nice $200 case. But like I said, I'm not set on the case for this build quite yet, so it might end up being this one, or it might be a special other one that's still sort of in the works. But for the purposes of this parts list, this would be a perfectly legitimate case to go along with the rest of the hardware that I've chosen. Let's round things out with a power supply, the EVGA Supernova T2 1600 watt. Basically, I wanted a maximum amount of power available, which is 1600 watts if you're in North America. You can't get a better efficiency rating than titanium. It's got all black cables, although I would probably go with a custom sleeve kit for this build if I was going all out. But for now, that'll work, and it's, you know, $350. That's super reasonable for a power supply. So as you can see here, there's just several products in here that are really skyrocketing the price. The motherboard being about $600, two $1,600 graphics cards for about $3,200 total, and then to a lesser extent the case and the power supply. So let's see if next I can do what you guys asked me to do and do a $3,000 high-end gaming PC setup that includes not just the computer but also peripherals, so mouse, keyboard, headset, and monitor. And for that, I have this build, which is also linked in the description. $3,000 full PC gaming setup. And what I actually did was I started with that ridiculous $6,000-ish build, and I was like, what can I cut down from that to make a reasonable $3,000 build and also fit in everything else? I came in a little over. I'm at $3,061 total after rebates. Hope you guys will forgive me for that. But this is also a really, really nice build. We have an i7 8700K, so I stuck with Intel to keep the high-end sheen going, I guess, although you could build this system for probably $300-400 cheaper by going with an AMD platform. The 8700K is 6 cores and 12 threads versus 8 cores and 16 threads on the 9900K, but it's also $370 versus $515 to $525. Doesn't come with a cooler, so we need that. We have a Be Quiet Dark Rock 4, which costs about $75, 70 to 75, which is a lot for an air cooler, but I like air coolers because you have peace of mind of never having to worry about leaks or a pump failing. This is also a really nice looking one. It's all black and it performs really well, so you'll be able to overclock your 8700K with this no problem. For a motherboard, I stuck with MSI to sort of have a comparison option here. This is the MPG Z390 Gaming, so you still have a Z390 chipset. It's still a very well built board that you can overclock with and everything. It still has RGB LEDs and 4 DIMM slots and, you know, all of the basic functional stuff that you'd want on a motherboard. It's even got a USB 3.1 Gen 2 front panel connector. It's just about $200 or $185 compared to $600 for the Godlike. That seems like a reasonable trade-off to me. For the memory, I stuck with the same kit of Team Nighthawk. It's just a 16 gig kit, 2x8 gigs instead of 32. Of course, you could easily double that up, just double the price. For storage, I just have a single 1TB SSD, which should be just fine for an operating system and plenty of games to get you going. And of course, you can add more in the future if you want. Here's another great NVMe SSD deal, the Crucial P1 1TB, which is $5 cheaper than the Intel 660p. It says it's on sale right now for a limited time, but it appears to be about $105 in multiple locations. So keep an eye out on that one as well as an alternative to the Intel 660p. For a video card, I used the parametric filter because I was like, I really want to try to wedge an RTX 2080 Ti in this build for $3,000. It seems like something that would be possible. So I wedged it in there with the cheapest one possible. Now, theoretically, you should be able to buy a 2080 Ti for $1,000, but that's a bunch of poppycock because, as you can see, cheapest one is $1,200. Surprise, surprise, the entry-level price for the NVIDIA Founders Edition. You can at least get an XC gaming version for that much, but I just added with the parametric filter here. So whichever 2080 Ti is the cheapest is the one that will go into this build. For the case, we have an $85 Fantex Eclipse, comes with a couple fans, tempered glass, solid case, solid build quality. Yes, you could spend 50 or 100 bucks more, but that's not going to make a huge difference, to be perfectly honest. For a power supply, we have a Corsair TXM 650 watt 80 plus gold certified. This one's semi-modular, black cables, 80 plus gold, 650 watts, and about 60 bucks after mail and rebate. The Cooler Master one I used in the first build, you could also swap in here just as easily. And then of course the peripherals. So for that, first off, I wanted to choose a monitor, and basically I wanted ultra wide because if you're gonna be full-time gaming, I feel like the ultra wide is a really nice experience right now. I also wanted 3440 by 1440 as a resolution because you can actually push really high frame rates on that resolution. It is fewer pixels than 4K, especially if you have something like a 2080 Ti. So ultra widescreen, 3440 by 1440, and then FreeSync support at least, so we can connect that up to our NVIDIA-based graphics card to still have adaptive sync, because we want that. I was trying to go for a really high refresh rate, like 144 hertz or so, like this LG monitor I have behind me, but these still cost a little bit more. This one's about $1,000. I went with this Asus ROG Strix XG35VQ, which is an Asus monitor, really high quality. It's part of their ROG series. It's $755 right now. 100 hertz, so not quite as high refresh rate, but 100 hertz with adaptive sync is actually a really nice refresh rate too. So nice specs all around with this monitor. Of course, if you can tack on another $200, $250-ish or so, I do think this LG behind me would be an upgrade to that. So I'll post a link to my video on that monitor in the description too. Rounding things out, we need a headset and a keyboard mouse. The HyperX Cloud Core gaming headset you can get for $70. Has a very nice set of cans, as well as a mic that sounds pretty good. You know, there's a lot of crappy headsets down in the $50+ range. This one's actually good. They have higher end versions of the HyperX Cloud set that have a few more features, but was trying to come in under $3,000, so I think anyone who gets this will be happy with it. Finally, I have the Cooler Master Master Keys Lite L gaming keyboard and mouse combo, which you can get for about $56. This has a mouse. Not a crazy high-end mouse, but forward and back buttons. It's got an Avago sensor on there. It's a solid mouse. Actually, I've been using several of these little Cooler Master, more budget mice for various purposes, and like they're just fine. Like you don't need to spend $100 on a mouse. And of course, we have an RGB keyboard. It is not mechanical, it is mechanical, but I've tried this keyboard. It actually feels really nice, and you don't need to spend $100 on a mechanical keyboard. Like this one also works just fine. So getting both of those for $56, I think is a great deal. Sort of rounds out this build and helps everything come in at, well, just over $3,000. So guys, let me know in the comment section down below what you think of these builds. Do you think they're reasonable? Except for that $6,200 one, of course. Let me know in the comment section if any of you guys are planning on building one of these systems relatively soon, whether you go with my parts list directly or if you swap a few things out here and there. Feel free, of course, to customize these to fit your needs and your aesthetic tastes. Thank you so much for watching this video, though, guys. Once again, links are in the description, and don't forget to vote on next month's builds. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.